Okay, we're continuing to make some recordings of talking about the best and the different setups that we can use for Adobe Camera Raw and all the different features we can use for editing. So we're on this image we were working on before. Um, and I'm gonna just, this is our whole image we've been working on. We made some adjustments in tabs. Uh, we've been going over the detail tab. So the next tab is the HSL, hue, saturation, luminance adjustments. And this allows you to like adjust minor things in different colors. It's limited to different color palettes. So the reds, oranges, yellows, greens, and so forth. And those are dictated by what Photoshop thinks is reds. So for example, luminance would add brightness. You can increase the brightness of the reds or decrease the brightness of the reds. So if we look at that, my main reds are going to be actually kind of my faces here or my skin tones. If you overdo it, it's going to do weird things. You can see right here, this does not look very natural. It looks like he has a poor skin condition. So we want to be a little bit cautious, but a little bit can go wrong way. If we felt like some of our skin tone was a little dark, we might be able to brighten that up a little bit. But some of these are going to be a bit limited in their use. Now, saturation will increase or decrease color cast of a particular kind or color. So one of the things that the background of this image is green, and that's because it was in a park and there were a lot of trees around, so it's reflecting light off of the, and you get the idea. So if I go to my greens and I pull this back, we can actually see the background here gets less green. Now if I pull out all of it, it's going to look awkward, right? So there's some subtlety to this, but if I pull just a little bit out, I may really like that. You know, it's also going to affect things like the shorts. It's affecting the whole image. So you have to be a little cautious about these. Now, hue is the least likely one that you would use because it's actually shifting one color to and influencing it with another color. So if I did this with the reds and I made the reds more magenta, it's going to make their skin tones look unusual. But sometimes this can really fix a color cast issue. So you can see this is not the time or place where I want to use these, but this is a place where I can make maybe the background a little bit more yellow or something like that. But you got to be a little careful because again, like you might turn your water from more of a green, natural looking color to more of a brown or something, and maybe that's not what you want. So, but this is HSL adjustments. The next thing is split toning. Split toning is really something that you want to use to add a color tone back in if you're doing a black and white. So for example, if I switch this over to black and white mode and came into split toning, now this is neutral right now, but if I wanted to say add a slight sepia-like color, I have to set the hue, and notice it splits up highlights and shadows. So I'm going to set the hue to 30. I'm going to increase my saturation a bit. So now you can see there's a little bit of a tone to that, and I could increase that more if I wanted to, right? So that's really the way to use this. You can do, and then of course you can do this the shadows the same. You could even change the color a bit if you wanted a cooler, for example, a cooler shadows. You could increase this, and it's a little strong, but now you actually have some kind of cyan in the shadows, but in the highlights you've got the more of the warmer tones. So a lot of possibilities with this. And if you don't like the effect, you just pull the saturation sliders back down to 0, and it's going to pull the effect out rather than doing something else to reset that. That's the easiest way. I'm going to go back to the color version of this image, but next up here is the lens corrections. Lens corrections are can be really nice. Enable profile corrections is nice. ACR and all the metadata from the raw file, it can read how what lens the image was shot with, what camera that it was shot with, and if it has it in its database, it can pull a lens correction profile and you can see the before and after. So one of the things with this lens that you'll see is you actually see the corners get a lot brighter because there's natural like illumination fall off of light. Remove chromatic aberration is also a good idea, and then there's some sub adjustments you can make if you want, like to further correct vignetting. If I say, well, that's a little too much for me, I'd like to darken that down a little bit, you can go ahead and do that. The FX or the effects button is really just two things. There's vignetting and adding grain or a type of like a noise to the image. I like to add sometimes vignette. So this is a place where you can adjust vignette. And extreme is too much, but a little bit can actually focus the eye to the center of the image, so that can be useful. There's midpoints, roundness, feathers of all this, so you can make this more or less distinguishable to your liking. And the calibration is something that's more for advanced users. If you want to make a custom color calibration of your camera, you can upload that here, and you have to come in and do a load a setting. But that's for something a little bit more advanced. And presets is something I don't particularly like using, but if you wanted to, there's just preset stylized applications to your image. So if you wanted a black and white look or make it more punchy or something like that, they're all presets. So, and the last thing is snapshots. I'm not going to cover that. I'll cover that in a later video. So that should get you started with using Adobe Camera Raw and get you off the ground.